Good day everyone. In this video, I'm going to discuss Chapter 3, Behavior and Attitudes. So in social psychology, attitudes are defined as beliefs and feelings related to a person or an event. Thus, a person may have a negative attitude toward coffee, a neutral attitude toward the French, and a positive attitude toward the next door neighbor. Furthermore, attitude is defined as the beliefs and feelings related to a person or an event, often rooted in one's beliefs and exhibited in one's feelings and intended behavior. So, how well do our attitudes predict our behavior? In the ABCs of attitudes, the reason why our behavior and our expressed attitudes differ is that both are subject to other influences, even many other influences. Next is we have the most widely used attitude measure, which is the implicit association test, which uses reaction times to measure how quickly people associate concepts. In implicit association tests, a computer-driven assessment of implicit attitudes is employed. Next, we have the theory of planned behavior by Isaac Agustin, working with Martin Fishbein. It says that our attitude, which is the A, and B are perceived social norms, and C, feelings of control, together can determine one's intentions, which guides our behavior. Compared with their general attitudes toward a healthy lifestyle, people's specific attitudes regarding jogging can predict their jogging behavior much better. So next is, when does our behavior affect our attitudes? So, to some extent, our attitudes matter. We can think ourselves into a way of acting. Now we turn to a more startling idea that behavior determines attitudes. It's true that we sometimes stand up for what we believe, but it's also true that we come to believe in what we stand up for. Next is role-playing. The word role is borrowed from the theater and is in the theater refers to actions expected of those who occupy a particular social position. When enacting new social roles, we may at first feel phony, but our unease seldom lasts. So next is, an addition to the definition of role, it is a set of norms that defines how people in a given social position ought to behave. So we now move on to saying becomes believing. People often adapt what they say to please their listeners. They are quicker to tell people good news than bad, and they adjust their message toward their listeners' views. Next, in addition to that, in expressing our thoughts to others, we sometimes tailor our words to what we think the others will want to hear, and then come to believe our own words. Next is evil and moral acts. The attitudes follow behavior principle also works with immoral acts. Evil sometimes results from gradually escalating commitments. A trifling evil act erodes one's moral sensitivity, making it easier to perform a worse act. So next is, why does our behavior affect our attitudes? A theory that can explain this is the self-presentation theory, which assumes that for strategic reasons, we express attitudes that make us appear consistent. Next, we have the cognitive dissonance theory, which assumes that to reduce discomfort, we justify our actions to ourselves. It assumes that we feel tension or dissonance when two of our thoughts or beliefs are inconsistent. The author, Festinger, also argued that to reduce this unpleasant arousal, we often adjust our thinking. So next is self-perception theory, which assumes that our actions are self-revealing. When uncertain about our feelings or beliefs, we look to our behavior much as anyone else would. So in self-perception theory, when we are unsure of our attitudes, we infer them much as would someone observing us. So by looking at our behavior and the circumstances under which it occurs. Next is, we have selective exposure. It is the tendency to seek information in media that agree with one's views and to avoid dissonant information. Next is insufficient justification. It is reduction of dissonance by internally justifying one's behavior when external justification is insufficient. Next, we have facial feedback effect. It is the tendency of facial expressions to trigger corresponding feelings such as fear, anger, or happiness. Next is overjustification effect. It is the result of bribing people to do what they already like doing. They may then see their actions as externally controlled rather than intrinsically appealing. So next, we have the self-affirmation theory. It is a theory that people often experience a self-image threat after engaging in an undesirable behavior, and they can compensate by affirming another aspect of the self. Threaten people's self-concept in one domain, and they will compensate either by refocusing rather, or by doing good deeds in some other domain. So, why does our behavior affect our attitudes? The three competing theories mentioned a while ago explain why our actions affect our attitude reports. The first theory, self-presentation theory, assumes that people, specifically those who self-monitor their behavior hoping to create good impressions, will adapt their attitude reports to appear consistent with their actions. The available evidence confirms that people do adjust their attitude statements out of concern for what other people will think. But it also shows that some genuine attitude change occurs. Two of these theories propose that our actions trigger genuine attitude change. The second theory, dissonance theory, explains this attitude change by assuming that we feel tension after acting contrary to our attitudes or making difficult decisions. To reduce that arousal, we internally justify our behavior. Dissonance theory further proposes that the less external justification we have for our undesirable actions, the more we feel responsible for them, and thus, the more dissonance arises and the more attitude change. The last theory, which is the self-perception theory, assumes that when our attitudes are weak, we simply observe our behavior and its circumstances, then infer our attitudes. One interesting implication of self-perception theory is the overjustification effect, which is mentioned a while ago. Rewarding people to do what they like doing anyway can turn their pleasure into drudgery if the reward leads them to attribute their behavior to the reward. Evidence supports predictions from both theories suggesting that each describes what happens under certain conditions. So that will be all. Thank you for listening.